Okay, for sure. Just try not to like in the background. You know, like that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're
Like,
slamming your shit. Hey, is your mic in your mouth right now? Because that's what it sounds like.
no,
Take it
no.
out of your mouth. It's too close. I can hear you. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host Jay.
And I'm Orange, and welcome to the regular show.
So today's topic is the Afghanistan withdrawal slash surrender, whichever you want to call it, under the Biden administration. So let's get into that. So we have an article here that we pulled up by the Wall Street Journal titled Biden's Afghanistan Surrender. So let's get right into it. So right off the bat in our header, the president tries to duck responsibility for calamitous withdrawal. Okay. President Biden's statement on Saturday, washing his hands of Afghanistan, deserves to go down as one of the most shameful in history by a commander-in-chief at such a moment of American retreat. As the Taliban closed in on Kabul, Mr. Biden sent a confirmation of U.S. abandonment that it completely absolved himself of responsibility, deflected blame to his predecessor, and more or less invited the Taliban to take over the country. With that statement of capitulation, did I say that right?
I think so.
Capitulation? Yeah, capitulation. I think I said that right. With that statement of capitulation, the Afghan military's last resistance completely collapsed. Taliban fighters captured Kabul, and President Ashraf Ghani fled the country while the U.S. frantically tried to evacuate Americans. The jihadists the U.S. toppled 20 years ago for sheltering Osama bin Laden will now fly their flag over the U.S. Embassy building on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. If that doesn't make you mad, folks, I don't know what will. Your thoughts, Orange?
I think that is so messed up. He's abandoning thousands of people. Imagine having depending on a foreign country to save you from these terrible people in your country that are doing horrible things to women and children, and then they up and leave for no reason. And then your president, who's supposed to be your leader as well, just up and leaves. And then the disrespect they're going to do to our country because that's the anniversary of 9/11, the biggest terrorist attack on our soil, and they're making fun of it by flying their flags on the anniversary of it. I think they're begging for war, honestly.
You know, I'm going to have to agree with you on that. What they're doing is completely terrible. They're committing, well, I mean, they're the Taliban. They don't care about war crimes, but realistically, what they're doing is committing war crimes because technically we are in a war with them, and they're beating women and children in the street, you know, taking little girls as sex slaves for their troops because they think they're holy fighters, you know, it's not a good situation. But let's continue. Our goal all along has been to offer constructive advice to avoid this outcome. We criticized Donald Trump's deal with the Taliban and warned about the risks of his urge to withdraw in a rush, and we did the same for Mr. Biden. The president's advisors offered an alternative, as did the Afghanistan study group. Mr. Biden, as always, too assured of his own foreign policy acumen, refused to listen. Mr. Biden's Saturday self-justification exemplifies his righteous dishonesty. 1 more year, or 5 more years, of U.S. military presence would not have made a difference if the Afghan military cannot or will not hold its own country, Mr. Biden said. But the Afghans were willing to fight and take casualties with the support of the U.S. and its NATO allies, especially air power. A few thousand troops and contractors could have done the job and prevented this rout. Worse is his attempt to blame his decisions on Mr. Trump. When I came to office, I inherited a deal cut by my predecessor, which he invited the Taliban to discuss at Camp David on the eve of 9/11 of 2019. That left the Taliban in the strongest position militarily since 2001 and imposed a May 1st, 2021 deadline on U.S. forces. Shortly before he left office, he also drew U.S. forces down to a bare minimum of 2,500. Therefore, when I became president, I faced a choice. Follow through on the deal with a brief extension to get our forces and our allies' forces out safely, or ramp our presence and send even more American troops to fight once again in another country's civil conflict. What I have to say to that is they need us. Once we got ourselves involved, the truth is they needed us. They realized how badly they need us, and we were not only defending, you know, the civilians there, but we were keeping the Taliban and other terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda at bay. Your thoughts on this, Orange?
I think Mr. Biden is absolutely in the wrong here because he said in a quote, 1 more year or 5 more years of U.S. military presence would not have made a difference if the Afghan military cannot or will not hold its own country. The problem with that is that we are helping them. It doesn't matter if they can't hold their own. If you don't like giving someone no time to be prepared for something, and if we would have stayed there, we would have given them time to prepare to get their army stronger and maybe gone them a better leader. And blaming it on Trump, saying it was his fault, is him just playing into the media, because most of the media, including CNN, which made a lot of money off of hating on Trump and stuff like that, he's just playing into that so he gets better ratings, because most of the people that voted for him were Trump haters.
Yeah, not only that, I totally agree with you on those statements, but not only that, he says, as in quote, as you mentioned, that they need to defend their own country. But the problem with that is we're the ones who trained them. We're the ones who supplied them. And we are the ones who protected them and gave them motivation to even fight in the first place. So, of course, when they get completely betrayed and we completely withdraw out of their country, leaving, spare Humvees and military-grade weapons and body armor for the terrorists to just pick up and just take control of course, the military is going to get demotivated. They're probably going to think, well, they're abandoning us. Why should I fight the Taliban? I mean, I might as well just quit. And that's what a lot of them did. A lot of them defected and just quit the military and just went off on their own.
It's just the fact that Biden was already not supportive of Afghanistan as a whole. And then he does that stuff and he leaves all that stuff there. It's so many bad decisions by the Biden administration all at once, which is why the Taliban took over Afghanistan so quickly. Like, it was rapidly fast.
It was unbelievable. I could have sworn, and I quote, that I'm actually going to pull that up because I don't want anyone to, I don't want to get this wrong. Let me see what he said. I'm 90% sure. That's right. It was in our intro video that I posted yesterday that he said, in a matter of months, I believe, around 6 months, he said the Taliban would probably take control over. It happened in 4 weeks. In less than 4 weeks, the Taliban completely retook control of the entire country, and the government has completely collapsed. Therefore, it is now literally a Taliban country, and that is insane to think about. We've been there for 20 years, and in the matter of days, we pull out, and they're already back. Everything we've done, all the lives that we've lost, all the billions of dollars, even, I believe trillions altogether, spent into Afghanistan and other countries surrounding it, just gone in the matter of days. But I think that's going to conclude this article because, unfortunately, it says I need to pay to read the rest of it. That's dumb. Okay.
Advertisements, am I right? Just freaking advertisements and paywalls.
Absolutely. So we can do this one. It's pretty much... We've already talked about most of it in the article, but I believe that they used a forever war term in there, which I'm gonna completely flame right now because people who say forever war don't understand that it wasn't really even a war technically because there hadn't even been a death since 2020, and that was one, I believe Taliban, or not Taliban, I believe one Afghanistan ally death in a year and a half, so it wasn't even considered a war zone, right?
I think
it was ridiculous.
It's like the way we were fighting the Taliban was like we were basically like the big brother. Our little brother's punching us in the stomach a bunch, but we don't feel anything. We just flick them every once in a while. Mm-hmm. Like we weren't taking the Taliban seriously. If we really wanted to, we could have taken Afghanistan and helped its government within 6 months.
Oh, absolutely. But I think the truth is that either they didn't want to spend more money than they already had, or they just didn't want to go all the way through because they were either just thinking it was a lost cause or they just didn't see a value in it. But I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, we literally turned our back on a foreign country that relied on us super heavily, So I
and we left our own civilians there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunate.
That's the worst part about it, because even if you make the argument that we shouldn't be messing in other people's business, we still had civilians there that we left there, and we already know how the Taliban feel about Americans.
Oh yeah, I mean, even with people who work with Americans, they are beheaded in the street, raped, ran over, lined up, shot dead. Sad, very sad.
Yeah, the Taliban should not be negotiated with and shouldn't be taken lightly because they're a terrorist group. What you do with terrorists is you obliterate them completely. That's how you get rid of insurgents and everything like that.
Yeah, I just can't even believe that it
It's
was even a thought in Biden's head to negotiate and ask the Taliban not to burn the embassy down. That I thought, what happened to America doesn't negotiate with terrorists, right?
we
I
don't no, it's like a golden rule of like dealing with like certain terrorist groups. You don't negotiate with terrorists
You can't give them any leniency, leverage whatsoever at all.
because most terrorist groups are really religious or super extreme on a cause. So if you give them any slight motivation, they're like, see, they're weak, blah blah blah, and then they'll get even more followers.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And I mean, the truth is, they don't fear death because they see either as winning. You know, they live to see the day that they win, or they die for their cause. And either way, they're happy. You know,
Yeah,
either way.
like
So there's really no winning.
there's a good quote out there. I don't know from who, but it's if the most dangerous person in the world is a person willing to die for a cause.
I mean, that's absolutely true. Especially like young men and women who are serving in our military and they're willing to die for their country, right?
Hmm.
That's why we're one of the most formidable and dangerous fighting forces in the world. But what we have in military strength, they also have in will, just like us, and which is why whoever, uh, what's the word for it? Whoever didn't think of them as very much, underestimated them, was absolutely wrong. As apparent to what happened, in Afghanistan in the past few days,
Like
they've
it doesn't
completely
matter.
taken the
We can't
country
get
back.
we can't get cocky as a global power. It doesn't matter if we're a global power, like a superpower. Like technically, we're the only superpower, but we shouldn't get cocky because Afghanistan is a big example. The Taliban are basically rocking our shit for 20 years. Like we should have just done a big push and took it over. Like come on,
Absolutely.
it was just us like messing around and just like was no point of it. We should have just gotten them within the first year of the war starting.
Yeah. No, you're right on that.
It's funny how I literally saw on the TV like when I set up with you yesterday talking about ideas and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, my dad was still up and he was chill with me staying up a bit late, and I was watching TV with him. He likes to watch the news a lot.
Mhm.
Biden literally said on the live television that he said that it was highly unlikely that the Taliban would take over Afghanistan. Are you kidding me, dude? And like not enough people are flaming him about it. Like seriously.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. What was it? He said that under no circumstances would we be lifting people off of helicopters off of our embassy because it wouldn't be that bad. Because what people were comparing this to was Vietnam, the Saigon embassy siege, where tons and tons of people were sieging past the gates and rushing in, and they had to literally lift people off the roof with helicopters to evacuate them, right? He said under no circumstance would that happen, right? That is exactly what happened, and you could see Chinook helicopters landing in the embassy and picking people up and evacuating them, right? After literally a few days after he said this. This is ridiculous.
I know, dude. Like it happened. The Taliban took over so quickly that when I first heard about it, I'm like, oh damn, he took them out. Oh damn, they already took over most of the country. Oh damn, they're at the embassy. Jesus, like I couldn't even catch a breath. Is how
No,
quickly
you're
they
right.
get. And it's
Yeah.
funny is like when people don't learn from history is like most democratic presidents the last good democratic president we've had that isn't scandalous or is just a generally bad president is JFK, and JFK was a really long time ago. So what I'm saying is like most democratic presidents are pretty bad, but we should learn from our history from Vietnam and learn we
Absolutely.
shouldn't underestimate our opponents. Like, as in Vietnam, the villagers, they armed themselves and we underestimated them and we took heavy casualties. Now,
Hmm.
2021, Taliban, we underestimated them and thought Afghanistan can do by themselves. They took over within a week and we had to evacuate and we left our stuff. That's how quickly we
Yeah, the truth
evacuated.
is,
When you
they had no
evacuate,
chance.
when you evacuate so quickly that you leave stuff behind, that's just like embarrassing.
It truly
It's just
is.
showing that America is getting weaker.
I mean, literally seeing the Taliban driving around in American-made Humvees and carrying M4A1s, over their shoulders is just insane to see. And they took over what is it? Afghan troops' vehicles, like helicopters. So now, not only does the Taliban have advanced American-made weapons and vehicles, they also have air support. That is ridiculously dangerous. That's never happened before. That's crazy.
Oh, okay, we're lucky.
Wait, why?
Afghanistan doesn't have any nukes, but they were
Right, but
developed.
their neighbors, their
No,
neighbors have nukes.
yeah, and they were developing them.
Yes, but so the problem is if they get big enough of a threat and they start taking over the neighboring countries, then they can get their hands on nuclear weapons. That's a big problem, you know. That spells nuclear war.
Yeah, what I'm saying is like if the Taliban basically owns Afghanistan now, they only need to take like one more city, right?
I mean, it's really just the last city, Cabal, and it's over. Actually, now that you mention that, I'm like, here, let me Google that real quick. So Kabul embassy taken over. Let me see this. I'm 90% sure it already happened. Okay, so it's already been completely evacuated. And what else? I could have sworn I saw something. It was
Honestly, Afghanistan was doomed the second the president fled.
mhm.
It was bad enough
Yeah,
that America. It was bad enough that America pulled out, but when their actual leader left, they were just like they already knew they're on their
yeah,
own.
that was
At
really
that
the
point,
final straw.
at that point, when the president left, he basically said, without saying it, that he was leaving the country in full anarchy. That's what Afghanistan is right now, just full anarchy.
Yeah, it's and to all the people who actually support and believe in the ideology of anarchy, anarchists, this is a prime example. The anarchy doesn't work. What's happening in Afghanistan right now? So, ladies and gentlemen, please take a look. What's
Yeah,
going on
cause,
over
cause
there.
they're like going like Taliban soldiers are going door to door because there's no rules, there's no laws, there's no unenforced laws.
Yeah.
Are going door to door, stealing children, and then doing terrible things on there, terrible things to children and terrible things to women, and like it's terrible. It's fucking disgusting.
No,
They're
yes,
terrorists. They're
it's
gonna do terrible things.
they've reinstated Islamic laws over there that women cannot be educated anymore. They must dress a certain way, and if not, they're beaten, right, or
And I
stoned to death.
Yeah, and I remember learning in school about 2 or 3 years ago about learning about how this girl was fighting for academic rights for Islamic women, and she finally got them. And all the effort of thousands of people to get women's rights over there and just to take it back from the Taliban is just completely crushed within days. Imagine seeing your entire world and all the work you've worked for just destroyed and completely crumbled to the ground within days.
And the truth is, you can't do anything about it because we were holding that together. Our presence there was holding everything together, and we pulled out and completely abandoned the people.
Like
So,
people might say that we're just trying to do like what the Cold War was and trying to enforce a democracy, but the thing is like we're not. Because we're basically the only superpower right now. We are basically the police of the world. If like the Taliban is bullying Afghanistan, we need to come by and say, hey, that's not right. Get out of here. It's like we're like that one buff kid who deals with the bullies at the school who bully the younger kids. That's like that. Like, come on. Like we're like the friendly
no, you're right.
giants. Sometimes we're not friendly. I will say that, but most of the time we are with foreign countries.
Okay, I want to do this article actually. I like this one because it's like there's like tweets from famous people, and then not only that, like it like quotes exactly what he said, including how illiterate he sounds.
Well, yeah, I don't think people know how old Biden is.
I don't think he's fit to serve, dude. Honestly.
Yeah, like honestly, Biden could be hiding dementia at this point.
Honestly, I mean, if you think about it, it might not even be him really doing the actions. People could be behind him and just using him as a puppet, like
I think Kamala
For
Harris.
example.
Yeah, we said it at the
Yeah,
same time. I think Kamala Harris is using him as a figurehead.
yeah. Well, she she slept her way to vice president. Like realistically, is what she did.
And yeah, and people only voted for Biden because they wanted Kamala Harris to be the president because they wanted the
Yeah,
first
because
woman
they wanted a
president. Like,
woman.
yeah, but that's cool and all. That's cool and all. First woman president. Let's go. But the problem is that she's not a good person.
No, absolutely not. It's
If we had a good
unfortunate.
woman president, like a good woman politician, I'm all on board. I don't care about gender.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're back with a second article. This one is by the New York Times. Surprisingly, they usually lean more to the left, but the article is titled "Disaster in Afghanistan Will Follow Us Home." So, they open the article with a tweet by Brett Steffens, opinion columnist. What on earth was Joe Biden thinking? If that is, he was thinking, on July 8th, the president defended his decision to withdraw all remaining U.S. forces from Afghanistan after assuring Americans that the drawdown is proceeding in a secure and orderly way and that U.S. support for the people of Afghanistan will endure. Obviously not, right? He took some questions. Here are excerpts from the White House transcript. Question is the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan now inevitable? Joe Biden answered, no, it is not. Why? The question is, the president, because the Afghan troops have 300,000 well-equipped, as well as equipped as any army in the world, and an air force against something like 75,000 Taliban, it is not inevitable. This just goes to show how unfit the president is at talking. Like, this is just ridiculous. This is just the first one, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So the next question, do you see any parallels between this withdrawal and what happened in Vietnam? With some people feeling he cuts him off, right? The president cuts him off. None whatsoever, zero. The Taliban is not the South, the North Vietnamese army. They're not remotely comparable in terms of capability. There's going to be no circumstance where you see people being lifted off the roof of an embassy, which is completely untrue. That's what we saw happen. Today, I believe, right? Today and yesterday. The next question.
No. Let's do a little stopping point right there, real quick.
Okay, that's fine.
I really like how the questionnaire was really smart about talking about that, because, as we were saying earlier, it's just like Vietnam, where the president underestimated the enemy, which was a guerrilla warfare type enemy, underestimated them, and then all hell broke loose. It's literally exact. Yeah, it's literally exactly like Vietnam. We had to evacuate the embassy in Vietnam, and just yesterday, or today I believe, we had to evacuate the embassy in Afghanistan because we underestimated the enemy. That is the one problem with America. We excuse me. Yeah, so basically the biggest problem with America is that we have our heads sometimes too high and too big. We think too much of ourselves, and so we think, nah, we can go let some puny guerrilla fighters. Yeah, we'll just take out our troops. Afghanistan will be fine, or the Vietnamese will be fine. Yeah, we're fine. They're a small army. No, we need to stop doing that. As in a country, we need to stop underestimating the enemy and realizing we need to use brute force and all our force against an enemy. Because if we only equally match them, it's just gonna be like how this war has lasted for 20 years. If we just if we instead used all of our troops like we were supposed to, or most of them at least, our reserve troops, just took in it and taken Afghanistan completely, not as like a hostile takeover, but as basically saving Afghanistan, completely wiped the insurgents and all their ideologies, help build rights in there and stuff like that, we would leave slowly like we are right now, and by the time it's 2021, Afghanistan will be a completely different country.
It would be, I mean, honestly, I think it'd be a great place to live. I mean,
yeah, it would be.
It's beautiful.
It would be a utopia. It would basically be a utopia in the middle of the Middle East, and it would be the starting point of democracy and rights in the Middle East. Then it would spread to Iraq and different places like that, and that would just help. It could even be a base of operations to help with Iraq.
Oh yeah, absolutely. A major ally, major ally. Especially with their oil reserves and all that, they could be a huge contributor in that. And of course, as we see with our gas prices recently, that's a pretty big issue. But besides that, I definitely believe that we really underestimated them, and we only equaled the troops that they had. If we put, let's say, 75,000 Taliban troops against 3,500 Marines or infantrymen in the army, that's pretty much the same, when in reality, we should have completely crushed the opposition, taken them out. And people say you can't kill an idea, but realistically, if you kill everyone who has ever heard of that idea, I think you can kill an idea, So,
yeah.
Let's move on.
And all their literature and stuff like that.
The books and all that. So the next question was, Mr. President, how serious was the corruption among the Afghanistan government to this mission failing there? The president, well, first of all, the mission hasn't failed yet. There is in Afghanistan, in all parties, there's been corruption. The question is, can there be an agreement on unity of purpose? That, the jury is still out. But the likelihood that there's going to be the Taliban overrunning everything and owning the whole country is highly unlikely. I'm going to take a stop there for a moment. And even before any of this happened, we knew that the Afghanistan military that we supplied and trained and dumped billions of dollars into was corrupt. We still did this anyway. And you know how Biden said they need to take control of themselves. How? They know they're corrupt, right? They know it. Before any of this even happened, they knew they were corrupt. So why could we let something like this happen? What are your thoughts on that, Orange? You have anything to say?
I find it funny because I think Biden himself knew that Afghanistan was corrupt because it literally says here, and I quote from the president, well, first of all, when the questionnaire asked, Mr. President, how serious was the corruption among the Afghanistan government to this mission failing there? He says, well, first of all, the mission hasn't failed, comma, yet, period. The problem is that a president has to be careful with his words, and when you say yet, you know, like you already know in your head that the mission is going to fail. Like you know that yourself. I think
Absolutely.
Biden was basically lying because Kamala Harris, his vice president, was telling him to lie about it.
I mean,
Because I honestly believe myself personally, not I don't really have any evidence, but I believe this personally, that Biden is used as a figurehead because we can tell he's really old, and sometimes old people can be really easy to take advantage of because they're slowly deteriorating, and a lot of people only voted Biden in because they knew he was old and he was eventually going to die, but probably before his presidency ended, and Kamala Harris would be the next president, and they wanted a woman as president. I'm completely fine with a woman being president. The problem is that Kamala Harris isn't a good president at all. When it comes to presidents, I like to remove all genders and say, here's their good qualities, here's their bad qualities. Do they even out? Is their international relations good or bad? No. Biden was a terrible choice because he had a terrible vice president who was probably using him as a figurehead. That's what I think about it. I think, honestly, Afghanistan's government is corrupt, but also our government is corrupt as well.
that's the truth at the end of the day. Unfortunately, that's what it is. I definitely do agree with that statement, but I don't think it's just Kamala. And even if it was, that's actually, I think that would be better than what I think. But what I think is, unfortunately, that most of the Biden administration is just, using him as a figurehead to just put their agendas out, and
Oh,
make
actually,
things
yeah, the
happen.
entire administration is probably behind it. Kamala is
I
probably just the
mean,
leader.
just the leader. Oh, that's funny. But I mean, I think that this is really big evidence because there's no way any sane person or someone fit to run would do something like this. In Afghanistan, this is ridiculous. So either there's an agenda being pushed, or old Joe is literally like he has no idea what he's doing. Like
He has
those are
like
the two
dementia,
options.
undiagnosed
Dementia
dementia.
and it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, because we've seen videos and memes of him. Like obviously, people make fun of him. It's what happens with presidents sometimes. But like
Right.
actual videos of him like genuinely like struggling to climb upstairs or struggling to talk. Like Biden, I feel
Yeah.
like there should be an age requirement to be president, but I feel like there should also be an age cap,
Deadline, like yeah.
or like yeah, an age cap for president, because you can't be like 95 and president. That's too old. Like you can't even
Uh-huh.
think right at that point.
Yeah, no,
And
that I
even
definitely agree with
how
that.
old is Biden? Like he's really old, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. In fact, well, the thing is, I'm gonna Google that right now. Actually, I'm like pretty sure he's 78 years old, and although people say he's pretty old, the truth is, I think it's not just his age. It's just like I don't even know what to say because Donald Trump is right, so that's only 3 years younger than Joe Biden. Yet Joe Biden is completely like mindless in what he's doing in office. So this is obviously not just his age. This is something else.
I think we should also have a mental check before we put a president in business and release it to the public and see if they're mentally fit, because there are some psychopaths out there who can put up a front and seem like the most charismatic people, but are secretly are evil. So maybe that's what Biden did. I honestly think the only reason why Biden got into presidency is because CNN took advantage of all the rage against Trump. Because anger is the easiest emotion to manipulate, because that's like it's blind rage at that point. So CNN was making millions of dollars off of hating on Trump, and so they just did that for a crap ton. And people didn't like Trump because of the media, so they're like, yeah, anyone but Trump. Oh, and he has a female vice president, even better. And it's like, and that's just how he got president. And they didn't
Yeah,
even I'm guaranteeing like 60 or 70% of the people who voted for Biden didn't know like half of his policies.
of course. I mean, I didn't know any of his policies realistically until I think a couple months ago, but because I don't think he was actually open about what he was planning to do in his presidency, other than Donald Trump man bad. I'm good. Vote me. I'll fix country. Right. That's really what he was plotting, or more like, oh, you know what? It was more of the racism thing because of all the riots and stuff. And realistically, the only reason Joe Biden was elected too is because if Trump was elected for a second term, there would be more mass riots, and of course, the country can't handle that right now. We're dealing with so much other stuff. So
Yeah, it's
I
a bunch
think,
of dumb people who are behind a cause they don't even understand.
yeah, our country really folded in that, in our time of need, and folded to the, I mean, honestly, I'd call them terrorists, like domestic terrorists, for what they're
Yeah.
doing in cities and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Like I don't condone any type of riots. Like yes, peaceful protests and you're allowed to protest. That's
of
fine.
course, yeah,
But when you
that's
start
fine.
rioting and at that point where people are taking advantage of the riots and looting stores because they're too lazy to get a job, that's where like the line is drawn.
Yeah. All right, I say we move on from that for now, and we finish the article. Yeah.
All right.
So Biden's headlessness on the cusp of a sweeping Taliban blitzkrieg. It's an interesting word. I'm going to assume that's a German reference I'm not understanding. Taliban blitzkrieg that on Sunday saw them enter Kabul will define his administration's first great fiasco. It won't matter that he is carrying through on the shambolic withdrawal agreement negotiated last year by the Trump administration with the eager support of Trump's isolationist base, and through the diplomatic efforts of Trump's lick-spittle Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. This is happening on Biden's watch, at Biden's insistence, against the advice of his senior military advisors, and with Biden's firm assurance to the American people that what has just come to pass wouldn't come to pass. Past presidents might have had a senior advisor resign in the wake of such a debacle at less Aspen than the Secretary of Defense did after the 1993 Black Hawk Down episode in Somalia. This time, Biden owns the movement. He also owns the consequences. We should begin to anticipate them now. The killing won't stop. Watch, if you have the stomach, videos of the aftermath of an attack in May on Afghan schoolgirls, which left 90 dead, or the massacre of 22 Afghan commandos in June, gunned down as they were surrendering, or Taliban fighters taunting an Afghan police officer shortly before they kill him for the crime of making comic videos. Now, of course, we can't show that on stream, but I'm going to take a pause here, and I'm going to yet again say we can't negotiate with these people. They're truly evil. They're the embodiment of evil, and the fact that we even thought about it, had the nerve to do that, is just completely ridiculous and shows that our country is not strong. Our country is not fit as of right now. What are your thoughts on that, Orange?
I think that's 100%. I 100% agree with you. And another thing is that the reason why people are trying to negotiate with them is because people are getting mixed up. They're thinking the Taliban is Afghanistan's people. Like, oh no, we're just being racist against a group of minorities as America. No, we're dealing with a terrorist group who like literally murder children and do horrible things to schoolgirls in the streets. Have videos of it, thousands of videos of beheadings and stuff like that, stealing organs from live people and live babies. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
It's no, it's definitely unfortunate, and I think it's
Like
ridiculous that
people
we're still
people need
putting
to
up with this.
realize that terrorists isn't a word that's used lightly. Terrorists are people who only exist to cause terror and harm for other people, and you need to get rid of them. It's like saying, it's like comparing a bee to a wasp. If the Afghanistans are bees, they're nice and they're friendly, and we're chilling with them. The Taliban are wasps. They are literally the embodiment of evil. All right, wasps. They don't leave you alone. They come for your stuff. They sting you. They freaking. I'm trying to think of a
I
analogy
mean,
with
that's
this, but
that's that's a pretty sums it up. I'd say. I mean, yeah, they're definitely wasps. Uh, but the unfortunate part is you're right about the bee part, because the truth is I don't think the Afghans are going to be very friendly with us anymore, because, like you said, we've been chilling with them. But when bees are provoked, then they sting you, and
yeah,
we very heavily provoked that all the people that were our allies who no longer have faith in us anymore. They no longer trust us to be there. So when Biden says, "Oh, don't worry, this is not a full withdrawal. You still have the American support." They don't believe us. They don't trust us anymore.
Yeah.
We completely lost
So
our
now,
trust.
so now our other allies are still going to think, wait, maybe America isn't as great as it used to be. Maybe it's not such a good ally to have. And then other countries, like for example, China was talking with the Taliban and discussing like, hey, we'll give you weapons if you deal with the Americans and stuff like that. Because China is against us
They want
because
the
we're
oil, is what it was. They
yeah.
they are making deals so that they can really fuel themselves with oils. Because I mean, the Taliban doesn't care. I mean, yeah, they'll take weaponry to inflict even more terror, right?
Yeah.
And
Taliban
the
is like a
country
pure
China,
evil group.
yeah, China has no morals. They don't mind negotiating with terrorists because China's practically a terrorist nation itself, is it not?
Well,
They do the
not
exact
the
same thing the Taliban
people.
does.
The government and the military over there is like a terrorist group. They force people to join the military for a certain amount of years and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
basically,
no, of course.
basically at this point, China is like a couple steps down from a dictatorship.
Right. I mean, I was comparing them to the Taliban because they have innocent, civilians everywhere, and the Taliban is just like that. They're just taking whatever they want, and killing civilians, and that's the exact same thing China does. They don't give a shit about the civilians, right? They don't care. They not.
Yeah. Yeah, like they've tried taking over Tokyo multiple times because Tokyo is the biggest thorn in the side, saying that communism doesn't work because Tokyo prospers and it's what's it called again?
Capitalist.
Yeah, it's capitalist and China's communist, and I think they're still stuck up in the Cold War where they hate capitalism.
Right. I mean, China is a prime example of why communism doesn't work, and America is the gleaming prime example of why capitalism works so well, and freedom of the people works so well.
Although
Right?
I believe corporations should have less appearance in the media because there's like the amount of degeneracy that has been like normalized in media has caused a lot of the younger generation to be causing all this civil unrest inside of America. It's the media. Like I'm not trying to sound like no fanatic, but like the media has been like putting their own regime out there of saying, "Hey,
Yeah.
only the left is good and the bad is right. They're terrible racists." Like I've seen online stupid articles like how apparently a boulder, which is literally just a landmark with no meaning behind it at a university in Michigan, I believe,
Yeah,
was
I did read about that.
yeah was called racist and is now getting removed because a group of minorities just called it racist. At this point,
I
minorities
believe
aren't anymore. They're like the powerhouse of things.
I believe it was an 85-ton rock. Hey, let me see this. Racist rock. It didn't say as what I could see, but it was in the tons. Tons, and the school spent, I believe, around $50,000 to remove it because the students, were not happy about that rock being there. When the truth was, the rock was not a racial or a racist symbol at all, and that someone in an article from around 1925, I believe, don't quote me on this, used the use of the N-word in an article writing about the rock, I believe, as a joke, which is one article in the history of about this rock. And the school decided to take it down for some reason. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, moving on. One Taliban official declared that their jihad was directed not against ordinary Afghans, but only against the occupiers and those who defend the occupiers. Yet the list of Afghans who fill that bill reaches into the thousands, if not higher. Women will become chattel. There are roughly 18 million women and girls in Afghanistan. They will now be subject to laws from the 7th century. They will not be able to walk out with uncovered faces or be seen in public without a male relative. They will not be able to hold hold the kinds of jobs they've fought so hard to get over the last 20 years, if not more. I mean, realistically, it's been centuries that they've had to deal with this. Journalists, teachers, parliamentarians, entrepreneurs, their daughters will not be allowed to go to school or play sports or consent to the choice of a husband. That is ridiculous. That's just another prime example of what's happening.
Yeah, like even if people don't like war, that like even like let's say liberals or the left side of politics doesn't like war, that's like the left side is known for feminism. That's a perfect example of why we need to take it back because using those 7th century laws against women in modern day society. And the problem is, 7th century, not very
It's
good for women.
it's not very woke.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
it's like
yeah,
it's like
that should be a
Genghis,
key
it's like
factor.
Genghis Khan type levels of stuff.
Right.
Like
I
I'm not
mean,
even joking.
this should be a key factor in a feministic movement that they should actually support the military and going back over there. That's what realistically should be happening. But for some reason, it's not. Either from the lack of media coverage or two, they just don't care. And that's the truth the entire time. And really, oh, feminism only matters if it's in America or if it's to American women. But that's ridiculous,
The
right?
problem is, feminism here is perfectly fine. Women and men are perfectly equal in America.
Oh, yeah.
What I think modern feminism should be now is helping get women's rights in different countries that don't have it. Which
That's
Afghanistan is a prime example of it right now.
Oh yeah, the primest example, if you could say so.
Yeah, like the primest example, other than like maybe Iraq.
I mean, or like North Korea, but
Yeah. Well, actually, North Korea should just a dictatorship all the way,
yeah,
100%.
I mean North Korea is a dictatorship. But I mean, then again, I say even that's better than Afghanistan at this point, as what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
At least they kill civilians equally.
Right. All right, let's move on with the article. Afghanistan will become a magnet to jihadists everywhere. Surah, if I pronounce this wrong, my apologies. Surahuddin Haqqani, the Taliban's deputy leader, is one of the FBI's most wanted terrorists. Don't expect him to change his spots, even if he claimed otherwise last year in a Times guest essay. Wow, they're trusting the word of a most wanted terrorist on the FBI list.
Wait,
That's
they interviewed
ridiculous.
him?
No, they didn't interview him, but he announced that he's changing his, I guess, views. I mean, this is a most wanted terrorist of the Taliban's deputy leader. Why would you even listen to that? Like,
Bro,
you shouldn't even hear this guy out at all, realistically.
Like
Don't even give him a speech.
that's so dumb.
Yeah,
That's
don't
like
give him
someone
a
crossing their
platform.
fingers. It's literally someone crossing their fingers and saying the most sarcastic voice ever. I'm changing my views, I promise. Like, bro,
Yeah.
come on. Like, you gotta be smarter than that.
The relationship between the Taliban and Al Qaeda will get stronger. Sadmo Mozeni, the head of the Afghan news and media company Mobi, told me on Saturday. Why should the Taliban fear the Americans anymore? What's the worst that could happen? Another
That is it.
invasion?
Here, can we stop right there? That is
Yeah.
the biggest thing right there. That's probably the main reason why we were in Afghanistan. Because if we didn't deal with the Taliban and show them who was boss, Al Qaeda would. We literally pulled out, giving Al Qaeda and Taliban both room to ally each other, but also gain confidence and get more troops. Like, that is the dumbest thing we've done. That's the biggest reason why we're giving Al Qaeda more room, and Al Qaeda is the bigger enemy. Because weren't they the ones that did 9/11?
Yes, that is true.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, we are literally giving the biggest enemies of the U.S. Like, we're literally basically giving them free confidence.
Right.
That's like,
I mean,
it's so dumb, dude.
we just gave them a country and arms.
Yeah,
Uh,
we basically just made them like 10 times stronger,
Yeah.
and they're gonna be even harder to deal with. At this point, if the Taliban and Al Qaeda form an alliance of any kind, we're gonna have to start drafting and like getting ready for war at that point.
But the part that got me the most about that was, what's the worst that could happen? Another invasion? That's absolutely true. You got to remember, these guys have been so devoted to their cause. They've been living out in the desert in the middle of nowhere in caves for the past 20 years, just waiting patiently. Because they knew America would eventually pull out, and it doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter if they're losing, right? As long as they stay in the fight, that's an eventual win, is it not? So there's absolutely nothing to fear from them. If there's another invasion, they're just going to fight. And if they have to go out and hide in caves again, they have to go out and hide in caves again, right? It's just not a big deal to them at this point.
Yeah.
So, moving on with the article. These guys are going to be the most belligerent, arrogant Islamist movement on the planet. Mozeni added, they're going to be the mecca for anyone young, radical of Islamic heritage or covert. It's
Yeah,
going to inspire people.
keyword is young. They get young men, not even older than me, like 12, 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, barely old enough, and then send them to do freaking suicide missions, and like bombings, everything like that. It's basically sending kids to war because they're a terrorist group, and that's what slowed us down, because us Americans had morals, and we tended to not want to shoot the kids. So they would always put the younger guys that they had like on the front lines.
Yeah. No, I agree with you definitely. It was always the either pregnant woman or children who were given like bombs to almost literally deliver like mailmen to troops that were either working on something or just deployed there, right? Just stationed at that spot. It was a
Because
bad situation.
because they would disguise themselves as civilians because you can't shoot civilians. That's a war crime.
That's the truth. Yeah.
And they're terrorists. But I feel like all war crimes should be off the table since we're dealing with a terrorist group. Some obviously like no chemical weapons and stuff like that. But at this point, with their tactics, I think we should talk to whatever friggin' thing it is. But I
Are you
think
talking about?
terrorists should have a special spot in war crimes saying it does not apply to terrorists because terrorists are
Right.
basically just people who
Are you
don't
talking
care about war
about the
crimes.
Geneva Convention is what I believe you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
There you go.
yeah. The Geneva
Uh,
Conventions.
I believe that, I mean, realistically, I don't think any civilian should be allowed maybe even near 100 feet of a base because if they come close, they are given warning, even if it means sending out a translator out there and telling everybody, but if you step past this line, you will be shot. That's the truth
Yeah,
of what needs to
like
happen.
Area 51.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. See, because they actually have it figured out over there. But I say we are running a little low on time, so let's get to the article finished up. We can stop. We have time to stop a few more points, but I say let it just run a little bit because I do want to get this article finished.
Alright.
Okay. So continuing on. What happens in Afghanistan won't stay there. The country most immediately at risk from an ascendant Taliban is neighboring Pakistan, which Pakistan, I do believe, does have nuclear missiles, right? I believe they have
Yeah,
one or two. Yeah.
that's bad. That's bad.
After years of Islamabad giving sanctuary and support for the Afghan Taliban, as long as they attacked coalition forces, Pakistan must now fear the next regime in Kabul will give sanctuary and support for the Pakistani Taliban. There may be poetic justice in this, but the prospect of fundamentalist forces destabilizing a regime in an estimated 116 nuclear warheads is an unparalleled global nightmare. Yeah, that cannot happen. And the truth is,
Yeah,
if they start invading Pakistan, we need to go over there immediately. We cannot let
yeah,
that happen.
yeah. Because at that point, it's like you basically if basically right now this is a couple of steps below World War III at this point.
Uh huh.
Because if they start to invade Pakistan, we need to send everything we can and our allies to Pakistan because we cannot let those terrorists get a hold of nukes because of mutually ensured destruction because they will launch them everywhere. And the rule is once one person launches them, everybody does, and then that's the end of the
Yeah.
world completely. There's nothing after that. It's fallout at that point.
Yeah. Short of this, the calamity in Afghanistan is a recipe for another wave of migrants, one that will wash over Europe's shores and provoke a populist backlash. We're going to see 20 Viktor Orbans emerge, warned Mozeni, referred to the Hungarian strongman and Tucker Carlson, BFF. America's geopolitical position will be gravely damaged. What kind of ally is the United States? In the last several years, the United States has maintained a relatively small force in Afghanistan, largely devoted to providing surveillance, logistics, and air cover for Afghan forces while taking minimal casualties. Any American president could have maintained this position almost indefinitely, with no prospect of defeating the Taliban, but none of being routed by them either. In other words, we had achieved a good enough solution for a nation we could afford to neither save nor lose. We squandered it anyway. Now, in the aftermath of Saigon Redux, the Vietnam embassy raid, every enemy will draw the lesson that the United States is a feckless power with no lasting appetite for defending the Pax Americana that is still the bias for world order, or basis for world order, my bad. And every ally, Taiwan, Ukraine, the Baltic states, Israel, Japan, will draw the lesson that it is on its own in the face of its enemies. The Biden doctrine means the burial of the Truman doctrine. So, needless to say, every country has lost trust in us across the globe, and they do
Yeah,
not
we're now
trust us to
being
be there for
doubted.
them. That's
Basically, this
bad.
is the beginning of us not becoming is losing our superpower status.
Yeah. But we didn't have to leave Afghanistan sometime? So goes a counter argument. Yes, though we've been in Korea for 71 years at far higher cost and the world is better off for it, but wasn't the Afghan government corrupt and inept? Yes, but at least the government wasn't massacring its own citizens or raising the banner of jihad. But aren't American casualties unacceptable? They are surely tragic, but so is squandering the sacrifice of so many Americans who fought the Taliban bravely and nobly, and as it turns out, for nothing. But is there any reason we should care more about the fate of Afghans than we do of desperate people elsewhere? Yes, because our inability to help everyone, everywhere, doesn't relieve us of the obligation to help someone somewhere. And because America's power and reputation in the world is also a function of being a beacon of confidence and hope, which is true, now these arguments belong to the past. The war in Afghanistan isn't just over, it's lost. A few Americans may share this humiliation, which is sad, and many more will shrug at it. But the consequences of defeat are rarely benign for nations, no matter how powerful they otherwise appear to be. America's enemies, great and small, will draw conclusions from our needless surrender, just as they will about the frighteningly oblivious president who brought it about. And that's the end of the article.
That honestly, right now, if Biden continues doing what he's doing right now, this is the beginning in history books of where they're saying this is where America fell from its grace. Because from now, although we sound like we're over exaggerating, being dramatic, I'm being dead serious. Legitimately, one mistake like this, showing that a small force can overwhelm us and even make us leave in a hurry, is just all our allies isn't gonna trust us anymore. And then slowly, civil unrest, bigger countries like Russia and China who don't like us too much are gonna start doubting us, saying maybe America isn't as strong as it is. We could try invading it. We could try giving support to other things. Next thing you know, we're getting ganged up by 3 different countries, and then war, and then mutually insured destruction. It's the domino effect. Honestly,
it's a losing game from here on out. Honestly,
yeah.
But we definitely do have a chance to turn it around. And
yeah.
Although apparently from what they released, I believe yesterday as a statement in the news, I definitely believe that Trump should and will be reinstated at some point. You may disagree on that, which is fine. But apparently I'm a terrorist for thinking that. And people who, what's the word for it, claim that the election was rigged, or people who, what was it, I believe, refusing COVID mandates are possible terror threats. I think that's just ridiculous. But moving on from the absolutely absurd, notification that was sent out to everybody via the news, I think Trump needs to be reinstated. And if not Trump, somebody who is fit to run, the leader. We're the leaders of the free world. We practically run the world. Someone who is fit to run America.
Yeah, and the thing is, what's funny is like they're not mentioning Kamala Harris at all because they know that the Biden administration is all the same. Like Biden himself is basically just saying what the Biden administration is going to do. They don't want the Biden administration in office at all anymore.
Yeah. But,
I say we give Trump emergency power so that we can start fixing what Biden did in literally 1 week. Like, literally Biden has fucked us in 1 week. It's insane.
I mean, he's been president for 8 months, and there's 2 catastrophes on our hands, not counting the smaller ones like gas prices and inflation, which are terrible. The Afghanistan thing.
Inflation's a big one, actually.
We will be talking about that in a few days, but for one, the Afghanistan conflict that we've talked about today, and 2, the border crisis that we'll be talking about tomorrow, which is, it's insane what Biden's managed to do in 8 months that hasn't helped the country. Hasn't. He's been practically giving away money to people who don't want to work. That's
I tend to be neutral on presidents. Like I tend not to be biased, but I honestly can't think of one good thing that Biden has put or done for our country. I can only think of really terrible things that's happened while he's been president.
But I definitely agree with that, but I think that's all the time we have for today. I thank you guys for joining in and listening. If you guys enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, maybe even subscribe. And what about you, Orange? You got any final closing thoughts?
Fuck the Taliban.
I think we're both mutually agree on that one. Anyway, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in on the show, and we'll see you tomorrow.